All right, so we're ready to start, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Today, we are talking about some brand new humanitarian and refugee programs that have come out 2023 this year. It's been a spectacular year with regard to the new programs that have been coming out. Some of them are very, very exciting and may apply to you or people that you know. And they're new and sometimes they can be kind of confusing, which is why we wanted to talk to you guys about this today. And with me, so my name is Elizabeth Lawn. I'm a partner at Law Mango G. And with me, we have another partner at the firm, Otto, who is here. He's the Mango G. I'm the lawn of our law firm. And I pride myself on saying I am one of 65 certified specialists who are lawyers in Canada. And but I would like to say Adol is even more specialized than me. There's only 15 certified specialists in both refugee law and immigration law in Canada. And it's my pleasure to introduce Otto, who is one of those lawyers here today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I am very, very excited to be here today to be presenting on these new programs. And I can see, especially by the number of people that are coming and are participating today, that everybody seems to be really excited. It's very rare that us working kind of in the humanitarian and the refugee field get to announce new programs. Things tend to be a bit stable in that area of law. But as Elizabeth said, things really changed this year. There have been some movements in terms of the refugee programs and really an alternative to the Group of Five program. We, for years and years and years, have kind of had that as our only tool in our tool belt. And now we have a few other options that we can talk about for people. And then in the humanitarian realm, we have these country-specific programs that have come up. And I'll talk a little bit about those kind of closer to the end of my presentation. The way that we're going to do this is Elizabeth is going to be assisting me. She's going to be moderating the questions area. So please feel free to put in any questions that come up. And Elizabeth will be kind of cutting in and out of my presentation to ask the questions so that we get some real-time answers. And we'll try to answer a few at the end also. Okay, so to start, the first program that I want to talk about is the Economic Mobility Pathway Pilot. This is extremely exciting, especially for people in the refugee realm. And as I stated, it's kind of a new program that we can look at as an alternative to the Group of Five program. So the Economic Mobility Pathway Pilot was kind of always there. It actually came out about 5 years ago, but it wasn't a very dynamic program. There wasn't a lot of use that we could make out of it. It had caps. It was very specific to the types of jobs that it could do. And this year, as a response, the government really looked at new ways to bring in refugees that wasn't through the traditional methods. And it really wanted a program that was designed for skilled refugees. So individuals that had certain skills in which they could bring to Canada. And also it wanted people that would already have a job when they came here, because one of the big problems that they were seeing is that when refugees came here, they needed housing, they needed supports. And if they already had a job, then they could do a lot of that work for themselves. And so they really took what was quite a small, very specific program, and they widened it considerably. And so now it's not as limited, and we're really excited because we've already been able to see a lot of use for this new program. So I'm going to start by going through the eligibility of the program because that's where this program is actually very, very interesting and where we've seen major changes have happened. Okay. So the first thing is we know that it's a program for refugees, but what does that mean in the context of this program? So when we looked at the group of five and kind of what was really the big problem around the group of five is that the only way that you could be eligible for the program is if you had a positive refugee status determination certificate from the UNHCR. So what this means is that you would leave your country, you would go to another one, usually where there was a UNHCR office, and then you would register with the UNHCR, and then the UNHCR would do an interview and determine you to be a refugee. Only then could you come to Canada. And this is how the government really stopped the flow of people coming in through the Group of Five program. And the reason being is because it takes years to get this refugee status determination document. For example, for Afghanistan's going to Pakistan, we were seeing it take almost 6 to 7 years to be able to get this document. And so people were stuck in camps for years and years to be able to come under that program. However, for the EMPP, you don't need just the positive refugee status determination, although it can be used, but you can also use just proof of UNHCR registration. And this can be obtained within weeks of leaving your country and going to another country, where basically you just have to show that you have registered with the United Nations. And that is very exciting piece of this program because you don't actually have to be determined to be a refugee. You just have to show that you registered as a refugee. Another thing that they're accepting is what we call temporary protected person status documents. So some countries are not or don't have the UNHCR functioning in them in a full and direct manner, and they have their own refugee schemes. And they give temporary protected person status. So Turkey is a good example of this to individuals who are staying in that country just for a short period of time while something is happening back home. You can also use these temporary protected status documents for the EMPP. You will need to also fill out a form demonstrating that you can actually live in that place for long periods of time. But it is another document that can be used. Okay. The last document that they're looking at is what they're calling an opinion letter from an approved agency. Right now, Talent Lift is an organization that has been determined as one of the agencies that can provide these letters. And we've been speaking to Talent Lift, and they have also stated that there's going to be more coming out about how the IRCC itself can also make a refugee determination. Our fear around this is timing. Any time that IRCC has to make any determinations on an application, it can really expand the timing. So for example, on the group of five to get an overseas interview right now, we're looking at about 2 years to do that. And so that is kind of something that we're hoping doesn't become the norm, but it likely could be. And that's why we're saying that the proof of UNHCR registration is the best way right now to be able to do this in the fastest method. This program, like many other programs, is kind of in its infancy, and what we often see is those are the best times to apply for a program because as programs are more developed, more and more rules come into place, and more people apply, and the timelines get a lot longer.
Otto, I think one of the best things about this program is just this proof of UNHCR registration. So they just need to call. They don't even need to have an interview, right? As long as they can just say that they called UNHCR, they have said, "Hey, we think that we might be a refugee, and we want to register with the UNHCR," right?
Exactly. So the way that registration works is each individual UNHCR in its own country determines how registration is done. But you're correct, in a lot of places, it's just a phone call to be able to do it. Some places actually have people on the ground and you have to visit the office. And some are actually doing it through email methods. But You basically go to the UNHCR site for whatever country you have fled to, and they'll teach you how to do the UNHCR registration in that place. You do need the document, so it's not just a matter of calling. They do send you a document to show that you have been registered as a refugee with the UNHCR, and that's the document that we use.
Right. And it's registration, not finding that they
Not
are a refugee,
determination. Yeah, that's what we're saying
just that
always.
I think I am a refugee coming out
Exactly.
of
You're
this.
registering as a refugee. You haven't gone through the determination process yet.
Great.
And they do have, in most cases, they do a basic interview for you at the beginning, but there's no assessment on it yet. It's just, why are you fleeing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is the other eligibility issue that makes this very different than the group of five and other refugee documents is its location requirements. So in all the other ones, it states that you have to be outside of your country of origin. So that place where you were at risk from. On the EMPP, it's stating on the document that you just have to be outside of Canada. So this doesn't apply to anyone who's in Canada. That's really important to note. Anyone who's going through the refugee process in Canada or would like to do the EMPP, if you're in Canada, you can't do it. But it can apply to anyone who is outside of Canada. And one of the questions that we had was whether this could be something that's used for people that are still in their country of reference. And they said that it could be. There are some problems that we're seeing with this, especially getting things like that UNHCR determination because that UNHCR registration, because you do need to be out of your country to be able to get that. However, the opinion letter from a certified agency may be something that you can get while you're still in your country of reference itself. So this also differs quite significantly. It means that people don't necessarily have to be out of their country and spending, years and years in refugee camps to be able to do this program.
They could also register, go to a country, register, leave that country, and they would still be eligible as well, right, Otto?
So far they are stating that there hasn't been a restriction on that. Like I said, this is a developing program, and we are a bit worried about. They do make an emphasis on something called durable solution. So what that means in refugee terms is that you can't be anywhere else in the country, and there is still a durable solution requirement. So if you're going back home and they find that you have a durable solution back home and that you're no longer at risk, that could put this application in jeopardy. And we're really waiting to see some decisions coming out of the EMPP to see what they do with durable solution. But right now, the strategies that you're talking about, there's nothing in the provisions that they have submitted to us that stop you from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, eligibility. So basically, as I talked about at the very beginning, this is a matching scheme. So basically, they want people who have job offers and people who have been registered as refugees overseas. They're matching them. And if you have a job, then you're able to come to Canada as a permanent resident. Okay. So some of the requirements that they're stating for job offers, this was also another really, really exciting area because comparatively, and Elizabeth, you can probably speak to this a lot, is that compared to job offers that you need for nomination programs, for express entry, there's a lot fewer requirements in this. So basically what they're talking about is full-time work. It does have to be full-time. And that goes by the regular definitions, which is at least 30 hours a week. It has to be non-seasonal. So this is really to stop people from using this as a farm worker program. So it does have to be full-time, non-seasonal work. The employer does have to be Canadian. You can't be a non-Canadian employer. And this is where it's most exciting. This program used to be limited to only high-skilled jobs. So ones that were managerial, which are often known as tier 0 jobs. One, which are often known as jobs that you need university degrees for, and 2 and 3, which are usually jobs that you need at least post-secondary education or college diplomas for. But now they're also including tier 4 and 5 jobs. These are traditionally thought of as jobs that you can do with high school education or just former experience in it. This is really exciting because this, a lot of things like restaurant staff, hotel cleaners, people who are doing retail work, that would all fall in these 4 and 5 streams. And there are very, very, very few immigration programs that are open to people that are working in these tier 4 and 5 jobs.
So basically, it's any job, any
Yeah, any job.
occupation, any occupation. And what I really also love about this is the requirements for the Canadian employer. There's not much at all. Literally, you need a CRA number. It's possible as well, just based on the regulations, for an individual to be a Canadian employer. For example, if you wanted to hire them to take care of your parents or your children, that is also possible as well, right? So as long as the job offer is genuine, it's a real job offer, and you're really offering these jobs, and you can show that you're able to support this. The sky's the limit as to what kind of jobs it is. So it's super, super interesting. This is the first time when they're kind of combining economic streams with refugee streams. And we see in this situation, at least for now, that it is very relaxed compared to normal economic stream rules with regard to the applicant and also the employer.
Yeah. They do say that they're going to be assessing these to make sure that they're not fraudulent jobs, that these are real positions. But to Elizabeth's point, usually, so for example, in nomination programs, you have to earn a certain amount as an employer. You have to have been around for a certain period of time. You have to have a certain number of staff that are citizens or permanent residents. None of these requirements are there. These are just full-time jobs for which an individual will be paid full-time hours, non-seasonal, and that they're Canadian. So that's very, very exciting. I do make a very quick side note that there is a stream also for people who don't have job offers. We're not talking about this too much because the number is 150 people. We've heard that they think that they might already be full for this year. But it's very, very limited. And so we're really looking at these as a program for people with job offers.
Otto, we just had a quick question about the employer. They're just wondering, does anyone with a registered business, can they be the employer? And the answer is pretty much yes. If they're a Canadian business in Canada, then pretty much yes.
Yeah, exactly. And people can get CRA numbers to be able to do this. Like if you are, as Elizabeth said, if you're looking to find somebody to care for an elderly person in your house or children, you can, as long as you're doing it legally, that they have CRA numbers, you're paying taxes for the individual. Those are all valid jobs under this program. Okay, work experience and education. Again, this is one that is quite exciting because they really lowered it from what we're regularly expected to do. There are work experience and education requirements. You do have to, almost in every category, show at least a year of full-time work experience. But that work experience can be in any period of time. So in a lot of the economic programs right now, your work experience has to be in the last 5 years or 1 year in the last 10 years. But this could be at any point in your life, essentially, that you've gotten that work experience. So it doesn't have a time base. And this is really because of the reality that refugees often have to have fled, have spent many years in camps, have not been able to work while they've been doing that because it's illegal. But they did work when they were back home many years ago. Okay. And the other exciting thing is that it can include self-employed work. Most economic programs that for permanent residency don't include work that you've done for yourself. As long as you can prove your self-employed work, it can include that as part of work experience.
And we know that, as refugees, oftentimes there could be issues with obtaining documents and such. they will require some evidence for this, but sometimes they do recognize about the issues of obtaining documents. And so we often can use ways like affidavits and other sort of letters from colleagues instead of your employer, if your employer is no longer in business, etc., to show and to prove that you have the work experience that is there.
Yeah, there's certainly a recognition that it's harder, and so it's not like they need these 5 specific documents. There are other ways to demonstrate it, and every case is kind of a bit different just based on what people can show.
Mhm.
Okay, looking at the education and experience, they kind of mix them together, and it kind of depends on which tier your job offer is in. Okay, so strangely, the top tier and the lowest tier don't really have any requirements. So if you're doing a tier 5 job or a high level management job, you just got to be able to show that you have the ability to do this. So this is often done through proving past work experience, um, for the lower tier jobs, demonstrating that you have physical capabilities to do it. There are a lot of different ways to do this, but there's no set education or requirement. However, if you're doing an upper management job and you have no education, that's going to clearly be a problem. You have to be able to demonstrate that you have performance abilities to do it.
Yeah, but sometimes maybe you have been working in a similar sort of situation, even if you don't have your university degree, but you have been doing the management experience, that might be okay.
Yeah,
Even
and there,
volunteer work could be something that we can use as well.
exactly. They've really been done this purposefully. You can see they mixed education and experience together in this category, and it's either and or in a lot of cases. It's not just you need the education or you need the experience. So they are really looking at people who, if they don't have the education, have the experience, and if you don't have the experience, you have the education. Okay. If you're doing a tier 1 level job, you need university or experience, at least 1 year previous experience in a tier 2 or above. So you always need some experience in a lower tier job or above, or you need education. So this chart kind of goes through what you need depending on the job that you have. So tier 2, you're looking at a post-secondary program of at least 2 years or an apprenticeship program of 2 years, or at least 1 year of experience from a tier 3 and above. And it keeps going down, and I won't go through every single one, but you can see from this chart, I think the most interesting is the top one and the bottom one. A tier 4 job only requires high school or on-the-job training or previous experience of at least 1 year in pretty much any job. So it's a pretty uh, easier education and um, work experience threshold to meet than most other programs.
Otto, we have a
Yeah.
question. The question is, how long does the refugee have to be employed by the employer? For example, if someone does come and gets their permanent residence under this program, can they work for 2 months and change jobs and still keep their permanent residence?
So yeah, so they're not saying it's not backwards looking or it's not forward looking. So there's no requirement that the person has to stay at that job for any certain period of time. They did say that they're going to be doing fraud assessments on the job, so they want to make sure that it is a real job, that the person did work there, and they may have questions if something does happen down the line. But as long as it's a real job and the person has started, there's no indication that they're going to be taking away permanent residence. They can always remove permanent residence if they think that it was based on fraud, but other than that, there's nothing in the provision that requires like at least 1 year of work or anything like that. It just has to be an honest job offer.
And that goes both ways. So if you have someone come and they're doing the job as an employer, they don't work out, you're not under an obligation to keep them employed for a certain amount of time.
Certainly.
I mean, certainly, you can't be one of those employers who say it wasn't a real job. I just did it to help you out. That's not what this program is. It has to be a real job. But sometimes employers fear that, oh, okay, if I participate under the program, what if this person doesn't work out in the end? And I have to keep them employed. No, that's not the case. It's meant to have a real job offer, and the person has a real opportunity to do the job. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
And as a note from the employer stream, there have been studies that have been done on the first EMPP program, and in most cases, there's been a very high level of employer satisfaction with the employees that are coming, mostly because refugees, by their very nature, tend to be very tenacious, hardworking, and very skilled individuals when they do come. They are extremely loyal to the employer that was able to bring them here under the program. So the early results of some of the studies are showing very, very high satisfaction with people who've come in under this program from the employer side.
Mm-hmm.
Language. So this is the one that we always get asked about. The language, again, is much, much, much lower than we're seeing in other economic programs. If the job is a tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 job, then they only have to do CLB 5s. And if it's a tier 4 or 5, then it's CLB 4s. CLB 4s and 5s are people are able to speak in the language, but it doesn't require fluency up to an academic level. This is kind of the I can get by in English sort of score levels is kind of what we call it. That the people are able to communicate in English or French to certain levels, but it doesn't have to be perfect or completely fluent. That's what I would call this.
And you do have to get your language test. So to do the IELTS or CELPIP or the TEF or TCF for French. But if this is the federal program, in the odd case that you can't, we can go through, and Ada will talk about the provincial programs, but they're much, much longer, much more difficult. So if possible, our recommendation is to try to go and get your language test so we can go through this program.
Yeah, and most countries in the world, especially places where people are fleeing to, will have testing centers for IELTS. They're pretty common, and we can send you lists of where testing centers are. But in most circumstances, we are asking people to do these language tests. As we've talked, so that is the federal program. We're really excited about it. It kind of summarizes all the eligibility criteria. It'll be very exciting that there isn't that much eligibility criteria. When this first came out, both Elizabeth and I looked at it pretty closely, and we thought we were missing pages because it is very different than other programs. It's very, very fluid. It allows for much lower things like language scores, education than we're normally seeing, and not a lot of requirements on the employer. Like we've said, our prediction is certainly that this is going to get more convoluted and harder. It's almost too simple for the government right now. And so we're telling people if they're going to do this, to do it very soon before that happens.
And also right now, the processing times are fantastic. They're 6 months, approximately 6 months, which is amazing for a permanent residence application from overseas.
Extremely fast. Okay, so as Elizabeth mentioned, there are also, besides the federal program, there are provincial programs. RNIP, which is the Rural Northern Immigration Pilot. There's the Atlantic one, and Ontario also has one. There are other ones being developed with other provinces right now. We always try to move to the federal-based program. In most cases, it's much easier and stronger. Like we said, the employer requirements are a lot higher in the Ontario programs. The jobs have to be in very specific regions to be able to qualify. There's very few ones that allow for low-skilled work, no tier 5s. But they did make it a bit easier for people that are going through the economic mobility pilot pathway within the provincial program itself. Usually in provincial programs, your work experience has to be in a certain period of time. They've taken that requirement away. So work experience can be over a longer period of time. And they're also recognizing that people can't get ECAs, so they can't get their credentials authorized very easily, especially if they're in refugee camps. They're accepting diplomas to show Canadian equivalencies. So they have done some things to make it easier, but you're really just kind of running through the regular base program where they have specific draws just for people who are going through the EMPP. The one time we kind of really look to use this, especially for Ontario, is when we can't get language scores or people don't hit language scores. That's when we start talking about the provincial programs a little bit more. But for right now, we love the federal program and we're kind of pushing everybody to the federal program.
Otto, we have a question about the federal program, I believe. They're wondering if this is a job offer, not LMIA approval.
Exactly. It does not need an LMIA approval. It just needs to be a job offer. Again, that slide that I put up, I know it seems um, given what everybody knows about eligibility and job
Yeah,
offers, it almost seems unrealistic. And like I said, we also did a double take, but this is all that we're seeing as requirements that have come up.
it is
For it.
so easy. It's so easy for the employer on the
Yeah,
part of
and
the employee.
it's meant to be.
Yeah.
I think it's really kind of looked at
Mhm.
it. I think when they designed this program, they were really looking and they were using a lot of agencies to kind of go to large employers, big factory employers, big hotel chains to do mass hiring. Um, and that's why they made it actually quite clean and easy. But I think what they didn't and what we're really using it for is for people who need one employee or two employees, somebody who needs to help with their family members, somebody who's a small business owner that needs help at running their small business. That's really where I think a lot of use can come out of this program is in these one-offs about somebody who just needs assistance. And as we've said, refugee employees tend to be very great workers, and people have been really happy with them.
Otto, we have a question. Does this apply to people or family members from the Caribbean, for example, Jamaica?
So again, if they can get, so there are reasons why people leave Caribbean countries as refugees. They can go to other countries, and if they can get UNHCR registrations, then it's open to them also. For Caribbean countries, will often people flee because of political situations, domestic violence, sexual orientation. We have seen people flee from countries like that, and yes, it is open if they can get UNHCR registrations.
Even without the UNHCR registration, for example, if the country doesn't have that, you may be able to get a recommendation from a
A
trusted partner.
recommendation or an opinion, yeah.
Yes.
But a lot of times we see UNHCR is in the Caribbean, so we'll see people leave one Caribbean country for another,
Yeah.
Trinidad to Jamaica, for example, and you can access UNHCR through the other place that you do go to.
Mhm.
Okay, country-specific programs. So I'm going to jump away from the EMPP for a while. However, if you do have burning questions around it, Elizabeth's still going to be collecting the
I have
questions.
one more. I have
Oh yeah,
one
let's do it.
more question here. This person says that the family and them they have been 6 years as refugees. Can they apply for CNCR? I'm not sure if they're in Canada or not. If they're in Canada, you can't apply for the EMPP.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We need a bit more information. If they're refugees overseas, like if they've registered with the UNHCR, then certainly they can. If they're in Canada, they cannot. So maybe if you can clarify the question a little bit and we'll bring it back
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We have another, so no for people who are in Canada.
Yeah.
And and if you don't have UNHCR, you can register or you can speak to us. And if there are reasons why you are afraid, to be in your country, and you meet the definition, we may be able to work with a trusted partner to get your programs there.
Yeah, like this is made for people who are at risk or facing persecution. Even a UNHCR registration is going to require them to tell their story before UNHCR registers you. They don't just register anybody who's like an economic person or something like that. Same with any of the designated organizations. But if there is risk in their country, then yes, one of these, we can use one of these. Okay. In terms of the country-specific programs, these are all new, and these really came out of Ukraine. To be very honest, we saw the annexation of certain parts of Ukraine. The government wanted to do a response to it to help individuals that were going through the Russian annexation and the war itself. And basically, what it started with.
Otto, we're looking at Colombia, Haiti, and Venezuela.
Yeah, I'm just going
Okay,
through where
okay.
these country-specific programs came
Yeah,
from.
sorry. Yeah.
And so basically what happened was they allowed individuals from Ukraine to come, they expedited visas for those individuals. And then once they came here, they were allowed to apply for work permits and study permits and stay in Canada. And basically, the idea behind this was that there'd be a short-term option for individuals while hopefully things stabilized in their country of reference. This was then mimicked for a couple of other countries, and then people started asking for kind of permanent residence routes as well. And so we started to see a few permanent residence routes start to sneak out of these temporary programs. And the first one that we really like that we've seen is the one that's for Colombia, Haiti, and Venezuela. It is very, very recent. It's very hot off the press. But essentially, this is a permanent residency program. And the reason that this permanent residency program was put into place was because Canada was very afraid of irregular arrivals. There are very high refugee mobility numbers coming out of these countries going into the United States. And essentially, they knew that if people had family members in Canada, that they could enter as an irregular arrival to the border, claim refugee status at the border, and get in past the Safe Third Country Agreement. So what they did was said, you know what, instead of having these people come irregularly, we're going to start a program where you can just be sponsored by your family member straight from the country that you're in. So you don't have to go through this dangerous, dangerous trip through the United States up into Canada. So the requirements for this program are you do need to be a national of Colombia, Haiti, or Venezuela. You do need to be located essentially not in the United States or Canada, but you could be in Mexico, Central America, South America, or the Caribbean. So if you're already in the United States, this program is not open to you. So they're really trying to do this to stop people from doing that very dangerous trip. You need to be a family member. They've defined family member as spouse, common law partner, child, grandchild, parent, grandparent, or sibling. Okay. So this is kind of interesting in a few realms. Not so interesting in terms of the spouse, common law partner, or child. Those individuals always had quite an easy sponsorship anyways that could have brought you to Canada. And so
the child in this case could be an adult child above the age of 22.
Exactly. Yeah. So children under 18, they always had a very easy way to already get in. But where it's really interesting is adult children. So people, like Elizabeth said, children above the age of 18. Parents and grandparents is interesting because they usually have to go through the lottery-based system to be able to be sponsored. So this takes you out of that. And then sibling is extremely exciting. We haven't had sibling sponsorship programs in Canada for a very, very, very long time. It used to be a very common way for refugees or a family reunification for individuals that were in really tough situations, and we haven't had one. And so we're really excited that it is allowing for siblings. And your Canadian anchor family member has to be willing to provide financial support, and they do sign a document saying that for at least 1 year. And so basically, if you have a family member in Canada that's willing to be your anchor, they can do this. The problem with this is that there's very, very few spots. There's only 11,000 spots. So this one, if this program is applicable to you, you needed to have called us yesterday. So we need to submit this program as fast as possible, so that we can get into the 11,000 spots. They haven't stated that there's no website that's saying how many spots are already taken and stuff. They're just going to be returning applications after they've already accepted 11,000 people.
So we have a ton of questions now coming in. For the ones dealing with EMPP, we'll save that to the end. Just have some questions about what the processing time would be for this program.
So early projections have been they've been saying that they want it within a 1 year processing time. Of course, we never really look at processing times until applications actually go through and we see one go through. So none have really been finalized at this point. So we don't know what the actual processing times are, but they are looking at it within the year.
And does a person need to be a refugee to apply under this program?
No, so this again is family member based. So this is not a refugee based program. They're calling it a humanitarian program. Basically, it's to respond to situations in Colombia, Haiti, and Venezuela that all individuals there are facing. So it's a humanitarian based program. So you do not need to be a refugee.
There's another question. Will people who are applying under this program be able to come to Canada while this process is being this application is being processed?
So that's a good question. And from what we're seeing right now, we do not think that that'll happen. They'll have to wait overseas because there is a requirement to be located in Mexico, Central America, South America, or the Caribbean. Can you apply and then come? That hasn't been clarified yet by the government. So right now we're advising individuals who are applying to stay there so that they're not in violation of this requirement.
And a person who says, I am a refugee, can I bring my family to Canada? So the person is already a recognized refugee in Canada. Can they bring their family to Canada?
Yep. So if you can be a Canadian anchor as a refugee in Canada, especially if you have your permanent residence, so you could bring them under this program.
So
There
as
are
long as you
also
have your permanent
you will want to speak to us though, because there are other PR programs where refugees can bring family members. And so it might be much faster to not do it under this program that only has 11,000 spots. You're probably better off, depending on how they're related to you. There might be other options to bring them.
Mm-hmm. So we have a few more questions. I think this question is very specific about a friend who left Haiti to go for training in France, etc. By the way, those people who can speak French, and for this person, I would say ask your friend to come for a consultation. Is very specific. But a lot of people who speak French, and if they have high education and etc. Even if they can't get through under this program, there are very, very good economic programs for those people who can speak French. They can get work permits very easily. They can apply under express entry very easily or under other provincial nominee programs very easily as well. So do ask your friend to come for consultation and when we can speak to them about their situation.
Yeah, French is the golden ticket, and especially for a lot of people from Haiti, we've used those programs.
Mm-hmm. And someone who's asking, their brother is located in Dominican Republic, which is next to Haiti. Can they come under this program?
Yeah, Dominican's not added to the list yet. It's only for these 3 countries.
Great.
Okay, moving on, Ukraine. So Ukraine, I talked a little bit about the temporary program. That's now been turned into a permanent residence program, which is really exciting. Again, family sponsorship program. You've got to be a Ukrainian national or spouse of a Ukrainian national. You have to be here in Canada to take part. So very different than the last program where you had to be away. This one you have to be in Canada. Okay. Again, very wide definition of family, including children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents, siblings. Again, the family member must be an anchor, so they have to be willing to provide financial support. So very similar in that way. And then a big question that we're getting for Ukraine and some of the other ones is, what are my PR options if I don't have a family member to sponsor me? A lot of individuals took advantage of the Ukraine program, are here now on work permits. You would essentially be going through the regular economic programs or any of the other programs that we have here in Canada. And what we're kind of telling people is to, if you do have a work permit and you have been working or you have been going to school, to right away come speak to us for a consult, because even though your work permit's good for a little while now, you might be needing to do some things to plan already so that you're ready to apply for one of the permanent resident programs in a few years. So it's really critical to create immigration plans, because if you do it all at the last minute, you may be told that you needed something 2 years ago, or that you should have gotten experience in something else, and you haven't done that. So you want to make sure that you're being proactive about your path to permanent residency. Okay. And now we have all these other temporary programs. So as I said, coming out of the Ukraine program, pretty much this has kind of been the government's response to any international crisis, is to, and there was a lot of pushback after Ukraine, essentially saying, like, you created a program for one country and not any other countries. The government did hear that, and we are seeing kind of temporary programs for in response to situations across the world. So the war in Sudan, in Iran, it happened after all the protests that had occurred there. In Turkey and Syria, and also a program for Morocco, it happened after the earthquakes. So we really think that this is going to be a common thing, where essentially, if you are from one of those countries, you have a visa, you can come to Canada, you're going to be able to switch your visitor visa to a work permit or a study permit. You get to stay here for 3 years while things kind of subside back home. For all of these, no PR programs have been announced yet. It may be that they get announced in the future, but the PR routes are exactly like I talked about for Ukrainian family members or people with no family. You essentially have to go through the regular paths. And one thing that we are seeing, though, is if you don't have a visitor visa from one of these countries, that it's very hard to get while they have this program in place. So it's becoming more difficult to get them, because they know people are coming here and applying for work permits or study permits. In terms of timelines for Sudan, you need to know it's been extended to October 27, 2024. So you do have some time for that one. Turkey and Syria are coming up very soon. It's expiring January 3rd, and there's no talk of it being renewed. So if you're looking to do this, or if you have family in Turkey and Syria with visitor visas, their timeline to come here and apply to this program is quickly diminishing. And Iran also is expiring February 28th. Again, they haven't yet said that they're going to extend this, so be very careful of these timelines. Okay, that's the end of my presentation for these exciting new programs. I think the major tip that I'm telling people is get in them fast. For the EMPP, like we said, it's kind of an early holiday gift to people. And in most cases, we have seen programs that are have so few requirements like this. Basically, the general trend is to add more and more requirements, and also for the timelines to go up faster and faster and faster. So if you're able to, if you want to bring somebody here and you're able to offer them a job, you really want to jump on that program right now. All the other ones do have deadlines, so you do want to seek out counsel right now to be able to take advantage of any of these programs.
Yes, and the programs do change so much. All of these programs were announced this year.
Yeah.
And there's going to be more changes coming up. Every single month, we see so many new changes. And the only way we're really able to keep you guys updated on this is through a newsletter and the website. If you go on our website, we're gonna just register you guys all for the newsletter to make it easy. If you don't like it, you unsubscribe. But we don't send out any like commercials or any advertisement. It's just purely for news on immigration that can affect you guys. So if you want to sign up, go to our website, lmlawgroup.com, and you can sign up there. We also have a lot of videos, recordings of our previous webinars on a lot of economic programs, for example. And we can certainly you can take a look at that. But what I would really recommend you guys do, because everybody's situation is different. Every person's situation is different. Do come for a consultation. If you did go to this webinar, let us know you've come to the webinar. It's going to be a discounted rate for you. It's only $100 for an initial consultation with us, and we'll go through a plan for you. All right, let's go through some questions here. So this person, Otto, is in Myanmar, is from Myanmar. She's in the Netherlands. She's thinking of seeking asylum in the Netherlands. She wants to know what she can do to come to Canada.
Okay, so again, there's lots of options, but if she is registered with the UNHCR there, the EMPP is an option if she does have a job here in Canada. If she's already been determined to be a refugee in the Netherlands, that's a bit more of a problem because then you do have a durable solution and it could be a problem for an application. But if you're just at the registration stage or she hasn't done anything, then certainly this is something that she could look at.
Yeah. Oftentimes you may need to leave the Netherlands to apply under the EMPP, but you also need a job offer as well.
Yeah,
I
the
would
job offer is
also
critical.
say, you've been studying in Myanmar for a while. So it could be that we can look at some options under the economic programs as well for you to apply. But if you have a possible job offer, then the EMPP would be a great solution. Okay, this person has a work permit in Toronto. I think this person is actually asking about something that we're not going to cover here. I would say come for a consultation, or you can also look at some of our webinars about economic programs. But if you're having a work permit in Canada and you want to apply for permanent residence, a lot of times, if you come under one of the humanitarian, like Iranian work permit, like Otto was saying, Ukrainian work permits, and you can apply for permanent residence under a humanitarian program, that doesn't mean that you can't apply for permanent residence. The fact that you have an open work permit is a very good opportunity for you to get the work experience. But you shouldn't wait until the last year to then think about your options for applying for permanent residence. Plan early because it could be that it depends on the kind of job that you get, the kind of employer that you get, the kind of education that you have, the kind of language skills. Come to us early. You don't have to already qualify for a program. You don't need to figure out what program you can qualify for. Come to us. We will help you figure out what you currently may qualify for, or if you don't qualify for now, what you need to do to get there. Okay. They're wondering, when you were talking about the provincial program, they said Ontario. What about British Columbia, or is it a federal program? I think they're asking about the EMPP.
So EMPP is a federal program, but some provinces have adopted their version of the EMPP. And right now it's the Atlantic, the RNIP, and Ontario, but they are, all provinces are looking at it and looking to come out with their versions of it. But we, like I said, it's always going to be better to go through the federal program if you have the language scores.
Okay. So we have 5 minutes left. And I'm just gonna select 5 questions and 1 minute
Okay,
each,
let's do
okay?
rapid fire.
All right, rapid fire. Could you please tell us where to apply for the EMPP program for refugees?
So basically what we're telling people is if you think that you can qualify, come do a consult with us so we can make sure, we can look at the job offer, we can make sure that it all works out, and then we do the applications through our office ourselves.
Okay. If someone has dual citizenship and 2 passports, can they apply under these programs for the EMPP, for example?
So that's a good question because it really depends on where your passports are from. So right now there's no, it just says that you have to, it doesn't say that you can't apply from certain spaces. However, any of those places, UNHCR registration, are going to be looking at what we call durable solutions. So for example, if your passports are from the United Kingdom and Myanmar or something, they're going to say you have a durable solution in the other countries. So it could be a problem in terms of meeting that criteria, but the program itself is not country-based or country-specific.
Okay, and what if the sponsored person finds a job in Quebec?
So yeah, so Quebec is a problem with all the federal programs. Right now, this EMPP is there is a Quebec version of it coming out that they've talked about. But right now, um, the, there is no program through the Quebec provincial program.
So we also wanted to differentiate between the job offer being in Quebec. That doesn't qualify for the EMPP currently. But if a person is or has had a job offer, for example, in Ontario, came to Canada, have their permanent residence, then they decided they want to go to Quebec. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, there is free movement. So once you have permanent residency in Canada, you can't be stopped from going anywhere.
What happens if a family member's income is not enough to sponsor all of the Ukrainian eligible family?
I think you're talking about the Ukrainian program. So that's an anchor-based system. So there isn't a financial list like for parental sponsorships, for example. You do just need to be able to show that they're not going to be going on welfare. I think that one is a really good one to have a consult with a lawyer to be able to go through what the actual financial requirements are, because you might be surprised you probably do meet them.
Okay. We will be sending out the presentation by email, and also a copy of the video will be on our website as well, lmlawgroup.com. Just give me maybe a few days to edit as well, the video as well. But did I ask 4 questions or one more,
More
right?
questions. We got one more. We
One
have time for
more.
one more.
Okay. This person asks, will it be a problem if a person goes back to French for his training after application? So maybe they're going back to France after their application. So maybe they're going to EMPP, they made a refugee claim, but then they go to France after they've made the UNHCR registration.
Again, if you are going back to France, then you're assuming that you have status in France, and durable solution can be a problem.
But
But
they've
once,
already registered with the UNHCR, so they then
yeah, so that's a really good
yeah.
question. So that's the one that we've kind of were talking about before. It's the same question. Can you keep moving around? Right now we're saying to stay in one spot. Don't be moving. Don't be moving to a durable solution, because it is still a refugee-based program. If you have status somewhere, you're not scared for where you're going, then the program is not designed for you. And I can see an officer saying that they have durable solutions somewhere else. So I would advise against it.
Yeah, like Adol was saying, there's nothing stated right now in the program that would prevent you from qualifying, but sometimes there are unstated assumptions in a program, and you don't want to risk these kind of things sometimes, because if it is that an officer rejects the application because you did, you know, they may have good reason to do so. And so in immigration policies, there are often what's stated there and what we can also kind of predict as possibly unstated claims by or assumptions by the officers when they're assessing applications. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for us, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, it's a good year for these programs, but certainly with every program, there are often intricacies, complexities, and details. We're here to help you guys out. Thank you so much for attending today, and hope to hear from you guys soon.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.